Okay, it's been a while since we've done a chorale analysis. Been busy with the end of school finals and things, but we're into summer now, and I'm just gonna do, I don't know, one of these a week or so, maybe, we'll see. But we're on 14.5 from the BWV numbers. And by way of reminder, when we analyze chorales, there are some challenges that students have with this. One is that they haven't played it or sung it enough to know what it sounds like. That's really important. We won't do that so much in this because the whole point of this is analysis. So if you're struggling to put this in perspective, play it out, listen to it. There's lots of great recordings on YouTube. The next thing is that the chorales tend to change key to key, phrase to phrase, and so it's hard to know sometimes what key you're in and how to analyze that. And so we have a method for that. First off, we're going to make a box and decide where all the closely related keys are, because those are usually the target areas we're going for. And then we look at cadences. So every time we get a stopping point, we're going to check out what key that is in, analyze that, and then we'll work backwards from that and forwards from the previous key. And usually Bach changes key very early in a phrase if he's going to change key, or immediately right there at the beginning of the next phrase. And then we check out scale degrees, because scale material tells us a lot, just like the key signature itself. But for instance here, right at the beginning, although it's two flats, all of a sudden we have the inclusion of an extra flat here. And then we have this note raised up here, and this note raised up here, and this note raised up here. These things are alterations to what you might think the key is. That plus the cadence and the sound will tell us what key we're in and help us to know what we analyze. And I think maybe the last thing is to remember that Bach loves strong chord progressions. It's what allows him to write such interesting counterpoint and things, because underneath all the movement and stuff that's going on, there's these strong, robust, functional chord progressions that we love the sound of. Okay, let's get started. Let's make our box. So if we are in a box here of related and closely related keys, we're starting with two flats right there, which is B flat and G minor, right? And then closely related keys are one flat and three flats. In other words, take away a flat or add a sharp and add one sharp, or sorry, add one flat. So that would put us in the key of F major or D minor. And this would put us in the key of C minor, or E flat major, right? These are the places that we expect the piece to go to. Another thing is that if Bach starts in minor key, he usually ends in that same key at the end, but he will change the last chord to become a Picardy third or a major chord. It's an aesthetic thing that he did. And so let's just start off right here with two flats. We expect to be in the key of B flat and G minor. And whether you listen to it or you can just read the chord right away, you have this this first sound set up right here. And it's clearly in minor, right? You can hear that. And this is also a G, B flat, D, and G. So we're in the key of G minor, right? Okay. Cool, and that's a one chord. Before we get too far down the road though, we'll check out our cadence right here. Okay, so let's talk about cadences. If you have to make a choice of like what are the most important cadences, you're gonna have half cadences, which means you're hearing something and then a 5 chord, right? Or you're hearing an authentic cadence. Could be perfect, could be imperfect, although Bach seems partial to perfect ones. And that means that it's a 1 or a 1 chord, and it's going to have a 5 in front of it, okay? So we can deduce right away by looking at the cadences. We can hear them as well. For instance, if I play right here, then I've got, sorry, as I turn away from that, reach over my shoulder to look here. So we have this, right? And then we have this, right? Well, that sounds like a minor chord. This sounds like a 5-1. In fact, if you have a minor chord on your cadences here, it's going to be authentic or maybe plagal, but it's going to be a 1 chord because 5 chords, whether they're in major or minor, are either altered or just natively major chords. And since this is a minor chord, we've got a C and an E flat and a C and a C. That's a C minor chord right there. We're not ending on a 4 chord. This is a 1 chord here. And this is my 5 chord. If I'm in the key of C minor, then G, B, D, F. This is my 5, 7, right? Like that. And this is root position 5, root position 1, and root on top. This is a perfect authentic cadence right there. All right, so what that means is that although we start in the key of G minor, as Bach is normally wont to do, he will change keys quickly, and then cadence in the key of C minor. So it's sort of like saying we're setting off on an adventure through different lands, right? And you notice that G minor and C minor are close related keys, okay? Furthermore, see this non-chord tone right here? It's an A flat. That's a ear, or it's a clue to our ears. It's kind of like if you're watching a movie or reading a book where the author or the storyteller drops you a hint that something's not quite as it seems. Like we started off in the key of G minor, but immediately there's this A flat there. And that immediately tells us something's up, because 2 flats plus 1 more flat is 3 flats, and that's concurrent with this right here. So our ears are immediately tipped off, even though it's just a 1 chord and another 1 chord right there. That neighbor tone, being an A flat rather than an A natural, tells us immediately something's up. So when you hear this from the beginning, right, you get the A natural up top, and then when you get to here, this goes to there, right? So this is saying, haha, we're going to be in the key of C minor because we're adding in a flat. And then this natural here also tells us we're in the key of C minor because the G minor chord has been changed into the G major chord dominant if you add that there. And that gives us the 5 of C. So he wastes no time. It's like one of those stories that says, once upon a time there was da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and something terrible happened. Now we have our story. It's like James and the Giant Peach. Ronald Dahl loves those kind of things. It's like Harry Potter for that matter too. It's like start off with tragedy. All right, passing tone, passing tones, right? And another 1 chord. This tells us we're going to be in C minor. I'm starting to think I'm just going to change to C minor pretty soon here. I can work backwards from here, but if we're thinking we're in the key of G, then this 1 chord becomes a major chord dominant if you want there, and that would be the 5 of 4, yes? Right? And then the 2 inversion right there. And then this is my 4 right there. However, that's 1 in the new key, and I think we're just gonna carve out here and say, I think I'm in C minor right there. And this is my 5, 2, my 4, sorry, my 1, 6, passing tone. This is a passing tone, but it's also a 7th. And then here's a really interesting thing sonically. Because the bass line has such a strong commentary on how we hear dissonance and function, this is chord tone and passing. This is a chord tone and neighbor chord tone and passing, but here we land on a non-chord tone because this is a G, B, D chord right there. It's my 5, right? And it's going to be a 5, 6 at that point right there. But that right there is another passing tone, but it's on the accent. It's a really cool sound. I'm just going to play the first measure. So starting right there, it's like, right, and then we crawl up through here and we get this. That A flat tells us that we're going to the new key. Oops. And then, you know, it's like, when we get to here, that then resolves to there, right? Which now really tells us that we've come to the 1 chord right there, right? It's kind of cool. So there's my 1 chord, C minor, C, E flat, C, G. You might go like, how do you know so quickly? You can do a bunch of things. You can look at it and spell it. There's an expectation, however, that after a 5 chord, it's going to be a 1 chord. Yeah? And then I have C, E flat, G, C. This is the 1, 6, 5 with my 7 and 1. Okay. Cool. One other thing I just kind of want to point out here that Bach jumps his tenor line up an octave, which is that note there, and up an octave, which is that note there. And so he's crossing voices which is something that we're taught in school not to do, or that it's a little more permissible on the inside voices. Bach will do it more on the inside voices than the outside voices, but he does it on the outside voices a fair bit too. I think more importantly is that the texture still keeps ourselves within, like, the upper voices are all within an octave of each other, right? So the texture is fine. The tenors get something fun to do here, right? Okay, gonna keep going and then have a surprise about this. So about this part here, but we're just gonna look ahead here and say, well, what chord am I on right here? And this is a B flat and a D and an F and a B flat. This is a B flat major chord there. It could be a 5 chord. We could be in the key of E flat major, or it could be a 1 chord. We could be in the key of B flat. My odds are always on the B flat because it's relative major, and I know that this is my tonic key, and we almost always want to eventually end up in the dominant, but if we're in the minor, also the relative major is very important, okay? Notice also that the A flat is missing from here, right? And yeah, so probably not 3 flats, probably key of B flat. And then let's just check out if I'm in the key of B flat right here, and this is my 1 chord. I'm just going to put that there because I believe it is. Then I should see a nice 5 chord right here, and that would be an F, 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 A, C holding over, F, A, C. There's my E flat, right? So that's a nice root. It's another perfect authentic cadence in the key of B flat, the relative major. So I'm going to play the full beat from right here so you can hear. I've got my predominant happening right there, right? And then in between the beats, right? Nice perfect authentic cadence, which means that we may be in the key of C minor to start with, but we're going to change to the key of B flat, right? This is exactly the same chord here. It's been revoiced, so the C is now on a G, right? This was incomplete. He jumps up and completes the chord here, but it's still a C chord. It's going to sound like a 1 chord, but then immediately, it's a passing tone, we have a D and an F and a B flat. This is a B flat chord, which is subtonic 7 in the key of C minor. It doesn't reinforce going back to a C because it's subtonic 7 right there as opposed to leading tone 7. And if we check here, this is an E flat and a G and a G, and the B flat's holding over. This is an E flat chord, and this is like a 1 chord and a 4 chord in the key of B flat, way more than it's going to be a 7 chord and a 3 chord, especially since there's no return right there. I just think we're gonna go like, yeah, we're now in the key of B flat. This is what, my 2 chord, right? Yeah. And then this A acts as a leading tone. It's not really a 5 chord. I mean, you can go 1 and 7 fully diminished like that, or sorry, subtonic, right? Or you can just say that's my leading tone into there, and this is my 1 chord, right? Okay, passing tone, jump down. This is gonna hold over. It's common tone between the chords. This is my 4 chord right here. It's my E flat chord, right? This is a pseudo 5 chord. It's got the F and the A right there, which is nice because that's gonna be strong enough. And the 4 going to a 1 is fine, but it strengthens that even there. And this is a B flat and a D and a F and a D. This is a 1, 6 in the key of B flat, right? And this is a 1 chord right there. Now, you might say, do I need to analyze these? And I would say, yeah, probably. Because it strengthens our harmonic progression to see that this is a 1 and this is going to be a 7 or a 5 and this is a 1 and then this is going to be predominance taking us in there. But sometimes it also makes the harmonic progression clear, when you might say, hey, I feel like I'm breaking rules. But if you look at the implied chords or the actual chords written in between the beats, they make it up and a legitimate progression that we are used to. Plus, as we drive closer to a cadence, sometimes harmonic progression or rhythm speeds up as well. So this is a C and an E flat and a C and an E flat. That feels like a, well, C, E flat, C. It's like a 2 chord passing, right? But is it really? First off, it's a passing chord, so it's not really important from a chord progression But if you think of it as if it had an A in there, then it would be a 7 diminished, right? It just doesn't include that note in there. 1, this is E flat, G, B flat right there. It's a 4. This is a nice suspension right there. It's held over. And then when we get to here, we have E flat and a F and an A and a C. So this is really just an F chord right here. And this is a suspension as well, right there, right? So kind of a double holdover suspension like that. If you really want to analyze this, then when the suspension happens, that's a 9. And then this here is a 6. No, wait, hold on a sec. E flat, sorry. 7, 6 right there for that suspension when it resolves. And then here, since it's the bass line, we go up to the next note right here. And so E up to F, that's a 9. And then a 10 suspension underneath, right? And this is a 5 chord otherwise, right? Sorry, 5, right? Which should take us to a 1. And if you think about it, there's my B flat and my F and my D. So that's a 1, 6 right there. This is a suspension right there as well, holding through, right? So we can analyze that as well at this point. There's a D up to an A, which is a 5, right? And then here it's going to hold over. No, it goes to the B flat. I'm sorry, it's not a suspension. It goes up. We're good. They both close in on that spot. It is a suspension here, though, right? Because this goes into a E flat, G, and a C chord. That would be like a C, which would be my 2, 6. You can either think of this as a 7, or you can think of it like a suspension, right? I just like hearing these suspensions happening and firing off like that right there. And so then we've got the B flat against the E flat there. It's a 5, steps up, 3 right there. Okay. And we have another nice PAC right there. All right, cool. This would be a great place to break the video in half. And I might do that. This might be the end of part 1 with a small explanation on the side here. This next part is identical to the first part, except right here. Because this started in the key of G minor, it's great, it goes along, but here we're hearing ourselves in the key of B flat major, and so he writes this slightly different to get us from B flat back to G minor. So if you look here and here, it's a G, B flat, D, and a D. This note is different right there because it's being approached differently, but then it jumps up to the neighbor tone there. Well, in this case, it's going to be an escape tone, I guess. Nope, appoggiatura, my fault. Sorry, bad right there. But it's otherwise all the same, except this is an E flat chord right there, right? So this is still in the key of B flat, and this is my 4 chord, and this is it's a G minor chord. So it could be a 6 chord here, a 6/4 like that, but probably right at this point we're back in the key of G minor, and it's the same afterwards. Functionally, it's not a second and first ending, it's a first and second beginning, but we don't have a notation idea for that. I mean, you could write this as a first and second ending with a little bit of shifting things, but really it's like beginning first version and then getting us back second version right there. Otherwise, it's identical. All right. I'm just going to keep going through. If I break this into another video, that's fine. But I want to point something else about at this sort of apex point before we go on to the second half of the chorale. This is the best bass line ever. Like if you play the melody here, it's fine. Great, right? And it does it again. But the bass line, and you know, the alto is sort of doing its job, and the tenor is kind of going along and does this leap thing and it's doing something cool. But the bass line is just bangers the entire time. It's like if I wanted to sing any part, it'd be the bass line. it's got the introduction of the interesting note, it's got the sweeping line, it even jumps back into this normal leap for cadences, and then from here, na 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 na. It's like, and just getting back here again, it's great the whole time. And in the second half, it's also really good too. Like the other parts do get to step up a bit here, but you know, from here, and then here, right, and then jump to the cadence, and then ending off. Other parts get nice parts along the way, a phrase or something like that, a really cool jump in and do something, but the bass line is just linear and fantastic the entire time. So it's nice. My mother is an alto, and she has always tasked me as a composer to write great alto lines because she felt that they were always boring. And so I try and do that whenever I write stuff. There's always at least an Easter egg or just a mainline great part for the altos. But something for them to do other than hold the same note out. And I feel like, you know, like I try there. In this case, I think Beethoven's trying to give the basses something more than just like, you know, he's giving them so much more in this. It's sort of the same idea. Okay. All right. Enough for that. I don't know if that's middle point of the video, end of the last video, beginning of the second video, wherever that sits. We're going to go on and do these ones here. If you'll remember, it's the same thing. You've got places you want to go. We're going to look at our cadences to help us see how we get there or where we land, and then we analyze backwards. Okay, so if we look here, G, B flat, D, G. It's a G minor chord, right? And that's probably a 1 chord then, because 5 chords would be major or dominant. Right? Plus, we started in G minor. This is the midway point to remind us we're in G minor, right? And if we look here, I've got a D and an A and an A and a D and an F sharp. That's a D chord. I expect it to be there. It's my 5 for that. Okay? Just before we go on phrase by phrase, we're just going to cover all of these here. Here I have a D and an A and a D and an F. That's a D minor chord. Well, that's the dominant. You remember here, this is the other place we really want to go to, right? Okay, so 1 flat. And it's minor chord again, so probably, oh, by the way, this is another PAC, right? Root, 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 okay? Here, we'd expect to find then, if I'm in the key of D, this being my 1 chord, 5 chord here, which would be A, C sharp, and G. This is an A dominant 7 chord right there. 5, 7. However, note that this is an IAC. I've seen lots of chorales where he PACs the entire time. I think this is more a function of his line that he wanted to write rather than trying to intimate that this is not the end. And we're coming to this is like the penultimate phrase or anti-penultimate phrase, penultimate phrase, ultimate phrase, penultimate phrase. I think rather. But it is a nice touch to go like, oh, but this is sort of a signal to our ears, maybe that this is our last phrase coming up, right? We expect this to be in the key of G minor at the end. I think everything there suggests that the E flat is just a reminder because we had an E natural there. The F sharp is the leading tone, and here is a G chord with the natural right there. So this is a 1, which is a Picardy third, right? Which we call modal borrowing, right? And it says aesthetic to say at the end of this piece here, we get to the final part. If you're ever in minor, he just likes to do this. Let's see, where are we here? There. And then this, as opposed to that, right? So I think we're in the key of G minor here. This is a G major chord. This is my D right here. And it's got a suspension being held through right there that resolves down to there, and then with my 7th right there. So this is my 5. If we want to get real technical with it, this is a 5-4 as opposed to a 5-3, which becomes a 5-3, and then adds a 7 right there. counting this line here for the 4-3 suspension, right? 5 being the A above, and then the C, so right there's my 7 right there. Okay, now that we know that, we can analyze these guys. Remember that we're coming out of, right? This is a B flat here at the end, right there, okay? So in our ears, we're hearing B flat to begin with, right? And if that's the case, then this is an F and an A and a C and a C, and there's my E flat right there. This is like a 5, 6, 5, right? Which should take us to a 1, right? B flat, D, and D right there. It's a 1, but he's got this suspension right there as well, which kind of is like sort of blurring it a little bit because he's trying to break the key in our ear so we can get back to G minor, right? Okay, and this is a C, E, B flat, and a D. So what do we have going on here? It's an interesting problem because the C is clashing against this. We can do this a couple different ways. I think the first thing is just to say, let's ignore that for a minute and let's just get our next chord right here, right? And our next chord and our next chord. And then we can go back and see what's going on in between. Sometimes it's better than marching straight through like that, okay? So for instance, this is a D and an A and an F and a C. So is this a D minor 7, right? Maybe, okay? And this is an F and a C and an A. So this is an F, and there's my E flat, so F7, right? And then we have a D and a B flat, and this is a B flat chord right there, right? And then we have this G stepping up like that. And then I have a C and an A and a C and an E flat. This is an A diminished chord, right? And then this comes down through here. It makes a C minor 7, which would be like a 4. Now let's start thinking about chord progressions, and then we'll come back and see if we can fill these in as well. If it's in the key of B flat, then this is a 2. And if it's in the key of here, then it's a 4. Both work just fine. A diminished, right? A diminished right here, that would be a 2 diminished, right? And it'd be a 6, which is kind of what we want for our inversion for a diminished chord. And that would be a 7 diminished here. I don't think there's a need to actually think of it in this key here because we're approaching the cadence and we'll hear this as a cadential figure. You're gonna hear, let me see if I chase this over on the piano. You're gonna hear this, right? And then this. Yeah, you're just gonna hear that all as predominant dominant there, right? That's clearly not, doesn't sound like it's in the key of B flat anymore, right? But this stuff here is tricky because this is clearly a 5-1 sound in the key of B flat, but we've been killing the key of B flat with these E naturals right there. This is intentional on Bach's way of thinking. He's distorting the key of B flat, but he's still using B flat chords so that we're more willing to hear the key of G minor cadence grafted into here. Let's take a look at these chords in between. C, E, and a B flat. This is like a C7 chord right here. This is like a 9th, or it's just like a suspension thing holding over here, like that. And that makes a little sense then, doesn't it? This would be like a 5 of F, right? So that's 5, 7. I'm thinking in the key of B flat right now, of 5, right? Okay. And then here as well, it's an E, G, G, and a B flat. That's a 7 diminished of 5 as well, which is of the F right there. And there's my F right there, which is my 5. And then I've got that there and a 1, 6, right? Okay, so what's with this right here? It's kind of fun. We teach this, but then we don't see it enough. But remember that if you have a 5 of something, although it likes to go to that thing, 5 of 5, 7 of 5, likes to go to there, it can do anything a normal 5 chord will do, and 5 chords can go to other places than 1, like 6, right? And I just want you to remember that 5 of 5 is 5 of F, right? So you have to think in the key of F for a minute, right? And if you're in the key of F, then 5 is the C7 going to F, but D minor would be 6, right? So it's weird to think of this 2 chord going to a 3 chord, because that's what 3 is in the key of B flat, D minor, right? But it makes sense to us if you go, well, 5 in the key of F can go to F, same thing for 7 can go to F, right? But it can also bail out and do the 6 chord, deceptive progression right there, like that. And so that's what's happening. It's better to label this as a 6 of key of F, 5, than a plain old 3 chord, because it doesn't explain why a 2 chord would go to a 3 chord so much. Okay? Nice. Where did we change keys? Here, I guess. It's funny because it's weakening the key of the key of B flat sound by getting rid of the E flats, pushing us to the dominant of here. But there's no cadence to say we're in the dominant. So at some point you're just going to go like, well, this is a 3 in the key of G minor, right? Okay. Next phrase, we know we're going to the key of D minor here. This is an interesting place here because off of the G minor, we go to a G major chord right here. This time, it's got the B natural, which would be 5 of 4 in the key of G minor, right? And this is a figure that he's done before. This is also really interesting. This F sharp is held over from there. I checked this against BachChorales.com. Seems right, like they have it written that way. It's just kind of funny because this melodic bass right here goes from here, right? And then it goes from here, and you get this augmented second here, which is very cool. We only hear that in songs like the B52s and things like that, and we're discouraged from writing melodic either on top or bottom augmented seconds because they're hard to sing sometimes at tempo. It's very cool though. Anyhow, but anyhow, okay. So that's there. Maybe that's his way of saying don't get too attached to C minor, right? Because this is just temporarily going to the 4 right there. And then see this, it's got that thing again there. So is it a 1-6? Because we're there. It's very similar and reminiscent to the beginning. Here's my G major chord, which would be my 5, right? And then it'll be 4, 3, because there's my 7th right there. Again, of 4, right? So it's like pseudo key of C minor, kind of like this was pseudo key of F right there. And then here's my 4 chord, right? Okay. Notice though that that's an A natural there. And then we get ourselves a G minor chord here, right? So there's my 1. This is like a little bit of a leading tone into there, which was reminiscent of the beginning, but then this holds through. We have this linear 7 diminished chord. This is F sharp A C, right? So it's like a little tiny 7 diminished 6 chord just thrown in there, which will take us to a proper 1 chord. You have a D minor chord here, right? It's kind of interesting. It's a passing chord. I think it's just the nature of the line coming down here with the natural as opposed to the sharp, because otherwise it would have been a full thing. But 5, minor 5, 6. And then we have E, G, B flat, which would be, well, think about that in this key. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking in the original G minor for a second. My bad. At some point we have to jump into the new key, so we'll call this 1, but then I think it's 4 for this new key here, right? And then this would be my 1 in the key of D minor, okay? And then this is my 2 diminished going to my 5 right there, okay? And that's inverted like that. Because if I'm thinking a D minor, this is an A7 chord, this is an E diminished chord, this is a D minor chord in first inversion, this is a G minor chord right there. So, yeah. Last phrase, we're just going to go back home to the key of G minor. It starts on a B flat chord, which is kind of a neat trick, right? So, is this we're in the key of D minor. Is this a 3 in the key of G minor is it a 6 in the key of D minor, right? Is it a 1 in the key of B flat major? And the answer is yes, maybe. It's more like surprise. It's not what you thought. At least it's not going on in D minor. I hear it like this, quite honestly. That's why I hear it, just to begin with, right? Because if you look here, it's just like if I'm doing this right here, I'm going from here, let's see. Yeah. And then I get to here. And I know that I'm in the key of G minor originally. I know I'm going back there. And then I start up with this. Then I feel like I'm in the key of B flat minor. I don't feel like I'm in the key of D minor anymore. It changes quickly though, because this is a G minor chord right here, which is a 6, right? Passing notes. This is a C minor chord right here, which would be a 2, right? And then we have an F sharp. Gosh darn it. This is a D, F sharp, A, C. This is a 5-2 in the key of G minor right there. You just can't but hear it like that. Now you can go back and say, like, was this here? Is this my 1 chord right there? Right, going to my 4 chord right there. Maybe. It's sort of both. We've gone between G and B flat enough that it happens very fluidly. But when you hear this, you'll know because of the leading tone and this that you're back there. And then it resolves down. This is a B flat chord in between right there, right? So it's I kind of feel like these are passing us through, right, to get to here, right? I don't know, it's a little flip thing. This is, you can think of it like a B flat chord, or you can think of them like passing notes. And then this here is part of the chord, and that there is still part of the chord. And these two things are just passing us through where we need to go, right? This is a C minor chord right here, C, right? Oh, maybe not actually. This is a little tricky. Let's go backwards from this for a second. G, this is my G minor chord right there. So I think we have to ask ourselves what's going on right there. It has the D and the A that you'd expect from a 5 chord, like a 5, 6, 4 or 4, 3, but then it's got this anticipation of this note coming up right there, and it's got a passing tone right there. So it's obscured by funny things on top. But then we get our 1 chord right there. And then we get our 5 chord with the suspension. This is all winding us up so that we can have a bigger sort of cathartic release at the end. So I'm going to play this last phrase for you so you can hear what I mean by this. It makes for harder analysis, but the ears make sense. So we're starting, I'm just going to go from here and we'll finish up with this. We're here, yay, I'm in the key of B flat, sounds like. And then we get a 6 chord, and then we get this, and then all of a sudden we get this. Okay, that's telling us we're going back to the G minor, but because he put the on the beat, remember before, the on the beat dissonance, we're not going to get that right away. That's going to happen there, but that's going to obscure it again, right? Because it's going to feel like a B flat chord. So it's like we get our G minor chord, or dominant affirming, right? But then it's like, right? And then we get to our 5 chord right there. And that holds there, and that holds to there, and then finally there. All right. Yeah. If we want to, I mean, it depends on how you hear that. You can call that a 3 in there if you want, but it's passing, right? All right, very cool. But dissonance, and then dissonance and dissonance and dissonance, and then dissonance right there, and even that's kind of like a neighbor dissonance, so that it really winds us up before we get our ending. All right, well, yeah, it's summer. Hopefully I'll do some more of these and, you know, keep building up the bank of these things. I hope that you you know, if you're just cruising through to get answers, that's fine too. But I hope you stick around for the videos and get the process of this. What's really important to know, it's really important, in addition to knowing, you know, how to read notes, is to know your scales and cadences, right? And that would be key signatures too, right? Because this tells us what key we're in. It tells us the world we're in, right? And then you'd want to know how to spell your chords, right? Of course. But then you need to know chord progression, right? And you can pick up a lot of that as we go along here. But in brief, 5 likes to go to 1, right? Or 1, right? And then we have a host of other chords like 6, which can go to 2, right? Or 4, right? And 2, and you know, I know these are major key signature ones. They could be for minor. We could switch them and go to 2, and then these all eventually, and 2 has no point but except to go to 5. And then there's some tricks as well, like they can go to 5 and not go to 1 sometimes, or 5 can be substituted with a 7. There's lots and lots of videos out there and textbooks that teach you this stuff, but you use this to triangulate, and then you're not lost. And then of course plunking it out, or just listening to good recordings of it, singing it yourself is really great, because that's why we're all here, is we're attracted to the beauty of, in this case, Bach's music. And so it's great to know what's going on, but it's really important to appreciate it for what it is, which is beautiful music. All right, that's enough soapbox for now. See you next time.